right, everybody, welcome back to the Alchemy Podcast. Really excited for my guest today, friend Ford Smith. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, dude. Thanks for having me.
I was driving over here and I'm thinking about our conversation, and the first thing that came up as I was thinking about you is one thing I really admire about you is every time I'm around you, I can feel your passion and like genuine authenticity of like wanting to help, right? Like you're really engaged in, physical health, right? Mental health, right? I know you've had like big experiences in your mental health experience, and the physical health, you're really pushing healthy eating. And you were actually the first person, I don't know if you know this, but you were the first person who introduced me to how unhealthy seed oils are. So I remember, I know, it's funny. I remember like a couple years ago, we were out here in Austin, and like, I got to go to Ziki at the time. Yeah. It's like, it's seed oil free. I'm like, seed oils? Yeah. And you're like, yeah, man. And so now it's like this big craze and everyone talks about it, but you're kind of on the cutting edge of that.
Oh, cool, dude.
Yeah. So I'm curious, is that like natural enthusiasm and genuine energy to like grow and expand and take care of your physical health, mental health, spiritual health? Is that always kind of how you've been, or like what kind of inspires that to your kind of forefront of mind?
Yeah, man. Thanks for saying that. That's cool that I got to share that with you.
Yeah.
I feel like if I look back, I think that I probably always cared about the physical thing. I don't think I really cared about the mental aspect of it. I think I was pretty vain growing up. I was like always a little bit like overweight, and I think that always stood out to me as something that I had to fix, and I was obsessed with fixing it, and I never really could figure it out for the longest time. And I think that in my thesis of like how we fix fix peace, I have this like kind of this meta goal of like within the mission within my business is to like, it sounds so super cheesy and super big and broad, but it's like to solve for world peace. Mm-hmm. And I think that the way we get there is through solving our own mental, physical, and spiritual health issues. I don't think if we can't do that, I don't think we can then take care of other people or be grounded enough to like help make sound, equitable decisions. And so I think that through my own journey and finding purpose in like my work and life and treating my own mental health disorders, like, or issues, depression, whatever, I found that like I just have to hyper focus on it. Like health has to be at the top for me. And it's like, there's like 20 things I have to do every single day for my health that like I cannot miss anymore. I'm so sensitive now, like getting off the seed oils, like was like one aspect of it. It's like, and it's a double-edged sword too. I don't know if you like fully gotten off of them, but like if you get off of them completely for like 5 or 7 days, and then you accidentally reintroduce one into your body, like in your diet, canola oil or something, because it's just hard to get away from.
You just inflame right up.
Dude.
It's wild.
Within like 10 minutes, brain fog, back aches, feet ache. You wake up the next morning with gut issues. It's like, it's terrible. So it's like, I'm sure you already figured this out, but for those listening, it's like, be forewarned, it's a commitment, it's a lifestyle change for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know you grew up overweight, because I grew up the fat kid too. Right? I was big.
Wow.
I was a big kid.
Really?
Yeah. And it's crazy to me that like when you raised overweight, there's like your psychology and the story you tell yourself in your head, at least for me growing up, was people see that I'm overweight. And so like my initial connection with someone is now I have to like overcompensate.
Oh, wow.
So I have to be smart, I have to be cool, I have to be funny, because I'm starting off negative. Like before we even have any interaction, you already think less than me.
Wow.
Because I'm overweight. And so unwinding that story, has been like one of the hardest things in my whole life. And on that note too, now, I take my health really, really seriously. One thing that blew my mind, I would say this was probably 3 years ago. I was like, okay, I'm going to actually take my health super serious as far as the supplementation, the diet, the seed oils, right? Where all these things. And one thing that blew my mind is what happened to my mind, my brain, right? Is just like, I think sharper, right? I feel more energy. I feel more enthusiastic, right? I was taking my sleep really serious, and just my experience is most people don't know how good they can actually feel.
Yeah, totally, dude.
You just don't know, because you're just so used to these poor habits. And like I would say, like, hey, go 30 days and be perfect in your health, and your energy goes up, your enthusiasm goes up, your quality of life goes up. And the reality is most people just have no clue.
No, they have no clue. It's nuts. Sylvia and I, my wife, did, we did like this food sensitivity test like maybe 2 years ago, and there was this guy out of Santa Fe that kind of guided us through it, and it was going to be a complete like elimination diet for like 9 months, and we made it like 2 months, and like we were traveling so much, it was just like so hard to pull off. But the most important thing that we got out of it was this food sensitivity test. It's called an MRT test, and they went in and they test your blood against like 400 different foods and spices and chemicals and stuff like that, and you get a chart, and the chart is like green, yellow, red. Red being your most inflammatory foods, yellow, middle, green like your optimal foods to eat. And I found that like I was hyper allergic to corn, sugar, fructose, chickpeas, salmon, avocado. Yeah. And these are things, dude, and these are things I was eating every single day. And the guy, before we took the test or went through the process, he was like, y'all, this is like a spiritual journey. He's like, you're not going to believe me when I'm telling you this, but he's like, your lives will change if you follow this like protocol and you stay away from these foods. And I just, when you're in whatever state you're in any state, healthy or sick, you can't fathom that like to change your diet would actually like unlock like 25% of like your productivity and happiness and whatever. And like full on, like I dedicate like at least a third of like my health success over the past couple of years to following this list and like strictly adhering to it. My wife says that like if I have, people will be like, so what happens if you have like corn or sugar or something, which I'm pretty much off of all of that. She says that I go from being like the guy on a second date to being like the guy in like a 40-year-old like unhappy marriage. It's like, it's nuts. And within 15 minutes, like I'm in a bad mood, I'm agitated, I'm scrolling on my phone.
So did you notice pretty quick shifts when you changed your diet? Like how long did that take for you to be like, for the light bulb to kind of turn on?
It took like 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah,
I think it took 2 weeks. I think it took like 5 to 7, a week maybe for the seed oil things. And we didn't really know what was happening with the seed oils. We're just like, let's just get rid of them. And then all of a sudden it probably took a month for us to process what was happening. But we'd get off the seed oils, and then all of a sudden we'd be like at a party or something, and we'd have like a hors d'oeuvre, and then our backs would start to hurt. And like we would just internalize this ourselves, and we wouldn't say anything about it. And then like a month later, we were both like talking, we're like, are you noticing something different? Like it literally like canola oil would show up in our feet, and then like peanut oil would like, and soybean oil would show up in our back, just like these weird symptoms, and they were correlated to like what we were having that night. So I guess it did take maybe a month to figure that out. And then really, I think I for so long I was on the ketogenic diet, and I go in and out of that one. I'm kind of carnivore right now, but I was finding that I would once every 2 weeks I would go to like a Mexican food restaurant when I was like hardcore keto for like 3 years, and I would like just blow out on like having corn chips and
just fired up.
I'd let it rip. And I would get in the car, and and then all of a sudden it would like set. By the end of the dinner, before we had gotten the check, I was catatonic, and I knew it was going to come. She knew it was going to come. I knew I'd be in a bad mood, but I was like, oh, this is what getting out of ketosis feels like for me. That's what I thought it was. I thought it was like me shifting from fat to like glucose is like an energy source, and that was my transition. Like it was rougher than other people. Sure enough, found out no, it was like the guacamole and the corn that was literally just like turning me off. So I don't know how we got on that topic, but yeah, it's
Dude, it's crazy how quick it shifts. I mean, I like to think that I eat pretty healthy when I'm at home. I flew in for this training I was hosting the other night. We had like a dinner the night before, and we went to, I can't even remember the name of the restaurant, but like some epic Mexican spot downtown Austin. And I'm like, I'm feeling great. And, I went for it. I had like these lamb tacos and chips and guac and everything. And, I wake up at 3 a.m. and my body's just hot.
Dude.
So hot.
100%.
Inflamed. And I like messed up my whole sleep. And I'm like, dang, like I underestimate how good I was, and just like one meal just shifts the whole thing.
Were you seed oil free up until that point or something, or what were you doing?
I naturally am seed oil free.
Yeah.
When you're cooking at home, it's easy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, when you're cooking at home, but like when you're on the road, it's actually pretty hard.
Tough. I use Seed Oil Scout, the app. Have you ever used it?
Yeah, I've got that.
Great. Yeah, it's great.
And so I was in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm feeling great. Like it's not gonna be an issue. And then you have it, and you're like, dang, like,
dude. That's like, I feel the same way, man. I will avoid the foods like that just simply because of the way I'll wake up in the middle of the night, just like in a hot sweat in the middle of the night. That's also been something too that like, I don't drink anymore, but like every once in a while in the past like 2 years, I stopped drinking when I was like 17. And then I tried a couple times throughout my 20s. It didn't work. But like when I was maybe a year ago, I just had this like realization that like after I had one drink, because I'd try every once in a while, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night just like dripping sweat, you know, and couldn't sleep. And finally, like I think you just train yourself. You once you understand how important sleep is to your life, it's very simple.
You can't go back.
You can't go back, dude. It's like it's binary. You're just to be like, nope, I know exactly what happens. Somebody also, I should mention this too. One of the things that really kept me away from alcohol, and still to this day, because I still feel like I have this like addictive itch, you know, and I'm always like trying to find something to like, which I'm gonna go do ibogaine in the next like month or two, and so I think that'll probably like, you know, get rid of the itch. But I've been like looking for these like solutions, and I found that somebody told me the other day, a month or two ago, they were like, your body, maybe this is Mark Hyman, your body has, you know, you've got good bugs inside your gut, right? And the gut-brain axis is so important for serotonin production, like 70 or 90%, something like that of serotonin is produced in the gut. And people use alcohol to kill bad bugs out like on surfaces or whatever, like surface cleaner. And all you're doing is you're literally just destroying all the good bugs that are in your gut. And so
the whole thing.
It was like that simple analogy was enough for me every time. And I swear I've thought about like a drink like once in the past, like, you know, few months or so. And I'm like, nope, I do that little thought process around like what the bugs do in my gut. And I'm like, no, I get rid of that.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up because I rarely drink. Just because it just wrecks me.
Yeah, totally.
And there's times where, like, for example, we had our big family vacation in Mexico, like 2 weeks ago. And leading up to it, I'm like, okay, I'll give myself a pass. I'm going to go down there. We're going to be on the beach. We're going to be hanging out. Like, I've got nothing on the next day. I'm going to drink. You know, in my head, I'm like, okay, this will be like the one time I drink. And we get to Mexico, and I'm just like, I can't do it. Like,
dude, good
it's
for
just
you.
not worth it. It's just not worth
Wow.
it, you know? And because it's just, you know, the after effects are really, really tough. And one thing, I don't know about you, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but I'm at the point where the reason I take care of my health, physical health, my diet, my sleep, isn't because of how it makes my body look.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to gain muscle.
Totally.
It's just because of what it does my brain.
100%.
You know, I have a health coach who programs my workouts and my diet, and he's like, hey, what are your health goals for the year? You know, thinking like how much you want to bench, how much you want to squat, what's your mile? And I'm like, dude, I just want my brain to feel good.
Dude, 100%.
Like, that's the only reason.
100%.
Yeah.
That's funny. Somebody yesterday just reminded me like how quickly you start to feel more like a man after just like a few days of lifting weights again.
Yeah.
Like just mentally. There's just something that turns on where you just like stand up straighter, and it's not even about the physical feeling. It's just this mental like application of whatever you're doing.
Yeah. So because I want to go into this because before I got into kind of the health and wellness space, the psychedelic space, I was very like unhealthy bro. And then I went through that phase where I had my first psychedelic experience. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do yoga and be vegetarian. You know, I don't know if you had that phase.
Totally.
Yeah. So I had that phase, and then I was vegetarian doing a ton of yoga.
Wow.
And then I remember when I started eating meat again and started lifting weights.
Yeah.
And I just felt like animalistic.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like primal again.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
and effective. So it's wild what it does to your hormones.
That's interesting, man. When I got sober for the first time when I was 17, I went to rehab, and I had a coach, I had a mentor that was like helping run part of the rehab that I was at. We were living in these tents in the Arizona desert for like 3 months. And
Did you do Anasazi?
No. What is Anasazi?
Oh, so Anasazi is like a rehab experience in, Arizona, and you like hike.
Oh, interesting.
Through the mountains, and you like camp outside, and you have to go to these next set points through the hike. I don't know if
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess because the Anasazi Indians maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I did something similar. I was like, showed up. I mean, it was like this rehab has since then been shut down for like a bunch of weird rumored stuff. But like, I showed up at this working cattle ranch in the middle of, it was like a 50,000 acre cattle ranch. And they had somehow cut a deal with this guy that owns this beautiful ranch out there. And like, we would just do work on the ranch for free. So it was like, I don't know if there was like, child labor issues that like came up because we're like 17 to like 23. But yeah, we were given a horse, and we lived in a tent, and we lived there for 3 months. And that's where I checked into rehab actually weighing like 229 pounds. And I got out of rehab weighing like 185.
You lost 50 pounds.
I lost 50 pounds. Yeah. That was over the course of a year, but because I was in rehab for like a little over a year, the majority of it was lost in those 3 months in the, June to August section of the Arizona desert where I was like melting.
Yeah.
But
Was going into rehab your decision, or was it encouraged?
it was the state of Texas's decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was 17, halfway through my senior year, I led 5 state troopers on a 29-mile high-speed chase. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I had broken into my neighbor's house. My dad had kicked me out of the house. I got my first DUI 3 weeks after I turned 16.
Is this alcohol abuse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Didn't really get into drugs. I actually tried Oxycontin or an opioid or something. I can't remember which one it was, but I had like stolen a pill out of like, get your wisdom teeth out or whatever. And there was like a pill left over, and I'd stolen one, and I was like, oh, tonight I'm going to like drink and I'm going to like try pills. Right. And I don't know if this is just me, or I just was told somebody told me the other day that there's like a certain percentage of the population that like gets super nauseous on opioids. Mm-hmm. And I was also in the passenger seat of my friend's car. And I found this to be, at one point, I got addicted to Kratom. If you've seen those little feel-free bottles.
The feel-frees, yeah.
Fuck, dude. Excuse my French, but fuck that guy who's selling those. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's like totally mismarketing and branding that business. And a lot of people are getting
really addicted to it.
Oh, 100%,
it's wild,
dude.
Yeah, so I used to take those all the time.
Same, dude.
And then you get off them, and you're like, you feel it. Like it's like your physical body is like craving.
Oh, dude.
It's wild.
Dude, I was addicted I drank 2 or 3 probably every day for like 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Then got off of them. I was at Psychedelic Science in Denver like 2 years ago, and in a hotel staying with my wife, and I went through 3 or 4 nights of like heroin withdrawals. Like could not sleep. Skin was like crawling, having to take cold showers like 3 times a night. It was insane.
Wow.
So, yeah, that guy specifically, he's like a recovering alcoholic, and I'm glad he's found whatever his solution is, but you go look at the bottle. I mean, at Khalil at Sun Life Organics, bless him, like he used to sell them at the front. And when I came up to him, I was like, dude, like they literally on their marketing, it says kava and other like natural medicines. It's like, no, the active ingredient is kratom. And they hide that on the back. So they've gotten sued a handful of times, and they haven't changed their ways. So, but the point is that I've learned that like whenever I was addicted to the kratom, like I couldn't drive in the passenger seat of a car. I could actually drive. It was weird. I can drive and not get sick, but I can't be in the passenger seat. I get super sick. Tying this all back to like me being an alcoholic versus like a pill popper. I tried this like pill, when I was like 17 or 16 in the passenger seat of my friend's car, and I got like super nauseous, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. And I don't know if I'm part of the population that gets nauseous with that in general, or if it's just because I was like driving the car. But I'm so glad I was in that
whether
position.
It was by an intervention,
dude, because I'm 100%. No doubt I would be dead. Like I've been so addicted to many things, and it's like, that stuff would take me out. But
yeah. So we're in rehab, and I'm curious, like, because I know you had a really big experience first time you did psychedelics, like a life-changing, and I really resonate with that. Those that know my story. So I'm curious, what was the perception about psychedelics before?
Yeah.
And what kind of encouraged you to dive in? And what was your substance or your medicine?
It was like 8 grams of psilocybin.
8 grams?
Yeah.
8 grams.
Accident, yeah. I ate
Wow.
a whole bar of chocolate. Whole chocolate bar by myself one night.
Yeah, tell me about that.
My perception of psychedelics before was, I entered the 12 steps. I went to my first AA meeting when I was 16 years old. Got fully sober when I was 17. Was in the rooms of the 12 steps for up until I was like 26. I was on SSRIs, antidepressants, and Adderall from like age 15.
Wait, so antidepressants and Adderall?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was put on Adderall at age 11 for ADHD.
11.
And then I was put on Lexapro and SSRI and Wellbutrin, which is like an SNRI, I think, at like 15. And I think I was it was misdiagnosed treatment-resistant depressed, but I was really just binge drinking alcohol all the time, like 3-4 days a week. And so of course, like you're naturally anxious, depressed, et cetera, Which like now, like once I've had drinks now and I wake up the next, I'm anxious and depressed and sad for like 3 days. Like it's like I just don't think people understand how big of a lever it is to pull whenever you just kick alcohol if you're struggling with mental health disorders. But I had I was on those meds, and my perception was, when you're in 12 steps, it's like a drug's a drug. Doesn't matter what it is.
All drugs are meth.
All drugs
are
bad. 100%. And ironically, I'm still in the cannabis industry, but I was in the cannabis industry at the time. So I didn't touch any cannabis, and I had this whole mentality like, I'm going to make a bunch of money while these like stoners get high or whatever. It's like this stupid, just narcissistic like shit. And very conservative, like closed-minded thinking. And then I got out to California, and I started like don't know, like, you know, you're in California, like you're listening to what other people are getting
Were you in
into.
LA?
I was in LA.
Yeah.
I was in like Venice Beach at the time.
Yeah.
It's like 2015, I think. And I had a girlfriend at the time who had lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. She was on 9 pharmaceutical drugs. And I brought her home a joint, like sample, you know, I was in the industry, had samples. Gave it to her, and she like smokes it one night, and unbeknownst to me. And I wake up the next morning, and she's like, "Hey, babe, like I smoked that joint last night, and I had a spiritual experience." I'm like, "Okay, what do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, God, I think came to me, your source, whatever, came to me and told me that I can treat my lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and get all my pharmaceutical drugs using cannabis and a plant-based diet."
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that sounds like nuts. And then she goes, "Yeah, you know, I haven't had my period in 9 years." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I just had my period for the first time."
Whoa.
So it's like those two things stacking on top of each other. One without the other was like a little whoa, but like both of those were enough for me to be like, this is worth paying attention to, you know? And so I supported her. I was like, go for it. And I watched her do that over the next couple of months. And then it was a 2-year journey. It's been a very long journey for her, but she's successfully done it. And through that process, I was like, why am I on my meds? Like, what is that about? You know, I think I'd just been told. I can still remember like sitting in a room with a psychiatrist when I was like 14 years old, and the doctor telling me, maybe it was, I don't know, somewhere around then, telling me like, "Oh, you just have a chemical imbalance." You know, like some people just have a chemical imbalance. And whether that's true or not, which I think it's definitely, it's true. It's gut, it's brain, it's traumatic brain injury, et cetera, like heavy metals, whatever, like trauma. I just subscribe to the fact that I'm going to be on these for the rest of my life. And that's because that's what the doctor told me. And that's what the doctor told my parents, you know, and there was no like off ramp for it. And so I tried to get off the meds because I watched my girlfriend get off of them, and I crashed and burned within.
Yeah. What's that process like?
4 weeks, dude. I mean, you know, you talk to your doctor and they're like, "Oh, just titrate off over 2 weeks and then you'll be fine."
Yeah. Like just take less over time, and there's, you know, you're like, come on.
Dude, I was absolutely not fine. I turned into a raging maniac. I still have scars all over my hands from this like 2-month experience. I could not control my anger. I would punch. Like we would get into an argument, and I would punch the center mirror in the car. I'd punch the side view mirror. I would just punch. Unfortunately, I did not punch her, but I punched anything around me that like could destroy or throw or break or whatever. And I eventually had to get back on the meds because I was like, fuck, I'm never gonna be able to get off these things. You know, I tried one more time, failed again, and I can still remember my mom. I would call her and I'd tell her, I'd be like. Actually, the third and final successful time I got off the meds, this is after my psychedelic experience, which I'll come back to the psychedelic experience in a second. My mom had watched me do this before, try to get off of them, and she was like, "Ford, I love you so much, but I cannot watch you do this, so I can't talk to you during this." My mom didn't talk to me for like 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
Because she's like, I know how difficult this is for you, and you know, whether that was the right thing or not to do, that's what she needed to do for herself. And we've got a great relationship now. So it's not like there's like resentment there. And actually a BOGO, which I'll talk about maybe in a little bit, was something that really helped me get through that resentment. Because there was a definite
It's like an abandonment. Like, "Mom, I'm going through this process. And I need your support."
Totally.
Like, you know?
And like, "Why did you fucking put me on these drugs? Why did you," you know, and I've cleared all that up now. And it's like, I firmly don't believe it was her fault. She's trying to like solve a problem, you know? And so the psychedelic experience, I had to get back on my meds. I'm like really depressed at this point. I can still remember being in an AA meeting, and I'm so fucking sad because I'm like, dude, I am never gonna get off these things.
Yeah.
And the sexual side effects that come along with SSRIs are just fucking terrible. All the side effects are terrible, you know? Suicidal ideation. I used to fly around on planes, and we'd hit some turbulence, and I'd be like, I would literally have the thought, like more than 30 or 40 times I've had this thought on a plane on SSRIs, being like, it'd be kind of interesting if this plane crashed. I bet I could walk away from the crash.
What?
Where the fuck does that idea come from?
These thoughts are just coming in.
Just come in. I bet I could walk away. I bet I could figure out how to survive the plane crash. Like, that'd be kind of interesting if this would happen.
Wow.
Where the fuck does that come from? So I'm like super depressed. I leave this AA meeting early. I go home. I'm staying at a friend's house. She's filming a movie. By the way, my girlfriend and I at the time, we'd broken up because I just couldn't keep it together.
Yeah.
I grab a bottle of tequila or vodka or something out of the freezer. I'm about to drink it. I'm like, this is what I'm left to. Like, this will make me feel better. I don't know. And I see the book Ram Dass's Be Here Now is sitting on the table, and I swear to God, I'd stayed in that house for 2 months. I'd never seen that book sitting on the table. It's the only thing sitting on the table. I pick it up, I read like the first 20 some odd pages. It talks about how he and, regardless, his partner from Harvard, how they went in and they found psilocybin, they met Maria Sabina, and they brought psilocybin to the West essentially. And then I'd been like, oh, I think like on the news the other day, I saw something about psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression. So it's like, okay, don't relapse on alcohol, go find mushrooms. You can relapse on mushrooms, and if that doesn't make you feel better, then you can come back for it. And I'd never had a psychedelic experience before.
Yeah.
And I'd barely even consumed cannabis at that time, really. And so, yeah, cut to, I had a chocolate bar. I eat 1 gram. And when you are on SSRIs and you, like SSRIs and psilocybin, like I'm not making any recommendations, but like that's one of the drug combinations you can actually kind of do and get away with. But like SSRIs and MDMA and stuff like that, like it doesn't work, right? You can have serotonin syndrome. But I didn't know any of this, and I'm like, have 1 piece of chocolate. It's probably like 1 gram.
And you're just at home by yourself?
I'm just at home by myself.
Solo setting.
Solo. Yeah, and I'm just like hanging out. And I'm eat a bar, a square or whatever, a gram, and I'm like, oh, this feels great, and like I'm an addict, so I'm like, oh, let's fucking go for more. Well, the thing about the SSRIs is that it in psilocybin, like in plant medicine, like as you know, it's like the nausea and anxiety is really a part of the process, right? It's part of the experience, and it's not always fun, right? And some people don't get it more. People have it more than less. Well, the SSRIs do this thing where like it tampers down all of the nausea and anxiety, and you get all of the bliss.
Wow. I didn't know that.
It's I mean, honestly, like I think about it a lot because I'm like, at some point I want to go and like figure out how to fund research around this because it was one of the most impactful experiences of my life. This and then the 3 months that were to come afterwards. But it let me have this super blissful high God state. Everything makes sense, but no nausea and anxiety. And then subsequently, I end up like eating the whole bar because I'm like, oh, this is fucking great. How deep can you go? Yeah. And I had a 4 or 5 hour experience, like full ego death life, like laid on the floor, was trying to drink water, like watched myself from the third person, tried to call 911, like legitimately just thought I was dying.
Yeah. And so was there a lot of fear involved in that?
Oh, fuck. It was the scariest. I mean, I've never had a greater fear, a more fearful experience in my entire life. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're going through like an ego, because it's really hard to explain, right? But like, what are you visually seeing? And like what, because it's like, it's a journey, right?
Yeah,
you get these hallucinations. What were the actual hallucinations coming through?
It was interesting. I didn't actually have like a lot of visual hallucinations. I did see, and you've probably seen this before, like on psilocybin, when you look at like anything, you can see the flower of life. Yeah. Like the actual, like the perfect geometric circle in literally everything. And you get down and you're like wiping the floor and it like won't come off. And you're like, what the fuck? So I did see that. That was kind of the visual stuff I was seeing. But more so, it was like I was watching myself in the third person as I'm trying, like all of a sudden you get this like, like fuck, I've really done it. And then then that fear spiral just spins out. And I'm like, I got to drink water. And then I'm like, oh, you've really done it. Like this is death. You have no idea what's happening.
And that moment too, I've had that moment too, the first time. It's the scariest moment of your life.
Yeah, dude.
You're like, it's over.
It's over. It's done.
And it's like, what? And I had that same experience. Like, what have I done?
Totally.
Like, oh shit.
Totally.
It's like, there's no coming back.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a real real near-death experience, right?
It's like terror.
It's
like,
terror.
Yeah.
It's full terror, dude. It's full terror. And yeah, I had the experience, and then I ended up like laying on the floor, and the downloads I was getting. Like the thing that resonated most deeply with me that I do remember pulling out of this was like, you've got to go back to Texas and be with family. Like that's it. Like you've got to, what are you doing in California? You know, like it's almost like you've done what you've needed to do out here. You can go home, you know? That was a big piece of it. Spending time with my family is a big piece of it. I wired my ex-girlfriend, like the girl with lupus, like $5,000 and like at the end of my experience, like I was lucid, like I knew what I was doing, but like I just like, and then subsequently, like over the next few months, I like started just giving away all my money, the next few months was like pretty insane. And this had a lot to do with the SSRI psilocybin combo, which I'll share. But what I did come out with on the other side was that I have been a narcissist for most of my life, that I am a liar and a cheat and a manipulator of women and money and just people and family. And what else? That I just blew the lid off of like politics for me. I was like, and Christianity and religion, I was just like, oh, it was religion and Christianity came up as a big one for me. I was raised Christian. I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm a huge Jesus fan. I'm just not a Christian. And I just was like, dude, this is all a tool for control. You know, it's like you've got, and I'm still trying to figure out like what came first, the government or the church. I can't figure out which one. Mark Twain says like religion came when the first fool met the first con man.
Yeah.
Like then he said, I was like, oh, it's so genius, you know. And it was like, so it kind of helped me like really, in a 4-hour experience, I literally, my politics, my religion, my relationship to women, money, family, like everything changed. Like I had one of those
completely
like,
rewired.
Totally rewired things, you know. And I've seen friends that have had these experiences, and I'm not saying I'm special at all. Like I've had friends that like popped the lid off of it, like the first 4 hours of their psilocybin journey, like all of it comes out. And that's how mine, it was like, boom, everything came out.
All at once.
Some friends have it where it's like, over the course
Layered.
of a few years, it's layered, you know, but I just got this like full.
I was the same way. My first psychedelic experience, it was like everything was hard reset.
Dude, full
reset. Like the old Doug just didn't exist
yeah,
anymore.
dude, yeah.
And it's like kind of like exciting when you talk about it, but like in the moment, it's really intense.
Oh, totally.
It's like, it's very disorienting.
Totally.
Like, and how, you know, I'm curious, how do you navigate after that experience?
Well, I kind of didn't.
Yeah.
I had full like ontological shock, you know. I had this reframing of reality, and I think this has something to do with the SSRIs, but for the next 3 months I thought I was Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of people going through this?
Yeah, Christ syndrome. Yeah, Christ complex.
Christ complex, yeah.
Christ complex. Yeah, it's actually, it's common.
It's very common.
And it's really scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah, it's really intense. I've had a couple of friends who have their first psychedelic experience fall into that, and they kind of go a little manic, and it's just it's really intense, man. It's, you know, that's why I would say psychedelics aren't for everyone, in the sense of, you know, I wouldn't recommend 8 grams by yourself. You know? And so, but it's, you know, navigating that and like grounding yourself back on earth is really tough, because after my experience too, I felt like I had some sort of superiority.
Yeah, wow.
Of like, oh, I'm in on the secret. I have it figured out.
Totally.
Right.
Totally,
and so, and it creates these like narcissistic behaviors too.
Totally.
You know, so it's kind of like this soft landing that comes, I mean, Christ complex is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And it's like, there's certain people that have it and then they tell people about it. And there's certain people that have it and they don't tell people about it.
Yeah.
I was one that didn't tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
I eventually told Ricky Williams, who's like a Heisman running back at the University of Texas. He played for Miami Dolphins.
Yep.
Like very publicly, like left a major contract because they wouldn't let him smoke weed.
Right.
Like, cool dude.
Yeah.
Friend of mine. I was sitting in his backyard one day in like Venice Beach, this is 5 years ago, and he's like, we're like smoking a joint. He's like, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you? And I was like, well, I did mushrooms one time and thought I was Jesus for 3 months afterwards. And he takes a hit of the joint. He's like, that's what happened to me when I left the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Like 9 months. And he's like, I thought I was Jesus. And he's like, I had consumed cannabis and that's what kind of triggered something. And I now like firmly believe like we all have access to that like Christ consciousness thing, you know, like we can all like live in that state where you are just channeling like that Jesus like energy, you know, where you love everybody and you're here to support and be of service, but it's just about like realizing that everybody has access to it and it's not just you and you're not the one, that it's like everybody.
So that's what I was about to say. So something I got really lucky with, because I've seen people get Christ complex and then it's literally like, I am Christ.
Yeah.
And for me, I had this experience, and I haven't shared this, but like my first psychedelic experience, I'm like looking down at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm God.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like looking down, and then I look up and there's other people around, and then I'm like, oh, everyone's God. And so it happened really fast. So it was like, I'm God, and like, and I'm glad that I was around other people.
Of course.
Because I'm like, oh, everyone's God.
Yeah, totally.
It's all God. The water's
good.
God, the wind's God, the mountain's God. It's all God. And so I was really lucky. I'm like really grateful I had that moment, because I was able to not get like stuck in that it was me, but it was everything.
So, dude, totally. Wow. It's like we are told so like with organized religion, and I've watched this with my wife, and not specifically with organized religion, but like I was raised to kind of believe that like I could literally do anything I want when I grow up. You know, not in this like this overbearing, controlling thing. It's just like, you want to be a Navy fighter pilot? Absolutely, you can do it. You want to be
we support you. You're worthy of it. We got
100%.
your back. Yep, I had that same upbringing,
dude. So fortunate, you know. And so I watch with my wife, because she wasn't raised that way. And it's like every day I'm just helping her retrain, like, yes, you can, yes, you can, yes, you can, you know. And she's gotten so much better. And a lot of it has to do with just journaling. And I don't know if you know like the 369 method. Have you come across?
I'm not familiar with that.
It's like rumored that like Nikola Tesla kind of came up with this idea, but like, and whenever he was trying to solve a problem, like he's trying to develop some certain resistor, right? Like He would say, I have, he would 3 times in the morning, 6 times at lunch, and 9 times at night. He would write whatever he was trying to solve in like the past tense as though it had already been solved, right?
Yep.
So he's like, I have created X, Y, and Z resistor and it is efficient or whatever, Yep. And he's just hardwiring that into his subconscious. Dude, I started doing it like a year and a half ago, and then my wife started doing it. I've seen the biggest shift in her just by way of literally just going in and like rewriting your code, this like subconscious code, So I think that like when I think about religion, I'm having this realization as we're talking, like we wake up. I can still remember like going through these, because I ended up eating psilocybin like every day for like 3 months after that.
Wow.
It was
all
in, dude.
Yeah.
I was like, and not necessarily that degree, that depth, but I was definitely like eating like a few grams a day, And when you're in that state, you can walk around lucid, be in this bliss state, still be grounded, but nobody really knows what's going on,
Yeah.
And I did that for a long time. Very impactful part of my life, like inspired everything I still do to this day. But what I found was that I would have these experiences where I'm like, wait a second, okay. You were born, you came out of your mother, you have no idea what the fuck is going on, where you are. And then all of these people just keep telling you these stories about reality and religion and how life works. And it just keeps writing that code for you, And so you have to almost have that like near-death experience or ego death to like have that ontological shock to even be able to take a step. I can still remember like talking to my dad and like being like, Dad, like we were born on this planet, this rock that's flying through space, and like we're just animal, like trying to describe the things that you inherently feel when you're in these psychedelic experiences. And my dad's like, oh yeah, okay, sure, And I know that someday he'll probably have that experience, and in that moment, and like now when I say it to myself, it's like it still was like shocking, and wild, but like it's not near as shocking as it was when you're in that moment. We were finally experiencing it and unlocking and like tying everything back, to like just birth and what we're told, and so there's this huge reprogramming that I think that like gets to happen in these experiences because you just get to like take a step out and realize you're not.
See it.
Yeah. Life is finite, And maybe we come back and do this all again. I haven't really figured out how that'll. I don't think I'll ever figure out how it works. Maybe someday.
Who knows? Maybe.
Who knows? Yeah. Grok. I don't know. But yeah, I think just to land the plane there, like I think that my experience, while it was very, I was in like a manic state for like 3 months. I ran around the world. I literally traveled the world with a backpack full of like a half pound of psilocybin. Yeah. And I had this calling, and it was like, dude, you are, and every photo I looked at, I'd see Jesus. I had longer hair at the time too. And I was like, I'd see Jesus. And it was like, you're the second coming. And I did all this research around mana and the correlation of the term mana in the Bible and how mana is like considered the hand of God. And it's like referenced like in the Bible a handful of times as like, seeing like the mana grow on the dewy grass. And I'm like, there's like these correlations to psilocybin in the actual Bible, and now through, I don't know if you know Brian Muir Rescue's work in the Immortality Key, but like now there's like strong suggestion proof that like the Kaikion brew, which the Greeks were drinking, was LSD, And so it's like, so I went through this process of 3 months where I was like, literally I'd give my like Uber drivers like psilocybin. Yeah. And I'd be like, you're going to thank me. It's like, you should have this. It's like a sacrament. It's like crazy. Started giving away all my money. And then I kept going into these experiences. And I would go, I do these like solo journeys, and I'm like, what's the point of life? What's the point of life? And all I could come out with was solve world peace. That's literally the only thing I could come out with. I kept, the first phase of it was like, okay, what is reality? Is like, okay, well, whether it's a simulation or not, that's not what I'm going to get into. But like, you're in a video game, Ready Player One, everybody else is in their own, like they're all in the video game too. They're all playing first player. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the point of this? Like, what's the point of this game? And all I could come out with was like, I was like, okay, if we're in a game, there's got to be like a goal to the game, right? Like, what's the goal of the game? And it was like, solve world peace. That's like all I could come up with. And so that portion of my life, I just shifted my whole focus. I was like, all right, that's cool. Let's do it. And then through shifting that focus, then all of a sudden, like I got to remove the psilocybin out of my life. I eventually came down and crashed and burned pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, because that's a real thing, right? Because you come up, right? People, and I've seen it a lot because psychedelics are like hot cool new craze. It's a lot more acceptable. People are
Yeah.
doing it. You see people have these experiences where it's really narcissistic and I am it.
Yeah.
And then you see people crash hard,
dude.
right? And I went through that same experience. You know,
Really?
I had to go, get professional help because I was going manic. And
Oh, I remember, dude. I remember you saying that.
yeah,
Wow.
it was like really disorienting. And so it's like this really difficult conversation you have to, because it's like there's so many benefits of the psychedelic space. I'm very pro psychedelic.
Yeah.
Right. It's with depression and anxiety, and the stuff you do with the veterans, with the suicide, like incredible work.
Yeah.
And I think it's not talked about enough that like there's real psychological schizophrenic dangers
Yeah.
that people deal with.
Totally.
And like, how do you kind of like balance those experiences? And so I think it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
And so, but it's like, yeah, how do you outweigh because the pros are incredible.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a price for everything.
Yeah.
Right. Everything has a price. And so, one thing that doesn't get talked about enough from my experience is just that crash. Like when you kind of come back to reality.
Totally.
It's painful.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've not fully settled on like how I feel about. I mean, maybe I have. I think obviously we need better diagnostic tools, which I think AI will help us out with over time, which will help us better understand who is a good candidate for psychedelics or not. I'm kind of like a psychedelic maximalist to some degree, where I'm like, I think it's a rite of passage. I think that we as a society have been like deprived of like a very key nutrient in our diet for 1,000 years or so, and it's psychedelics, and like whether it's something you do once in your life or it's once a quarter or once every year or whatever like that. I just think everybody should have access to being able to experience that. I know that there are risks involved. Obviously, if you've got predisposition to bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, like those are things that you should watch out for with certain drugs. I have found though also like a good friend of mine, and actually the inspiration for a nonprofit that my wife and I started about 2 years ago. It's called MIND. It's the Multidisciplinary Investigation into Novel Discoveries and Solutions. It's a mouthful. Tim Ferriss told me the story where I was asking him, why are you so interested in psychedelics? And he said, well, I have a friend who did 5-MeO and smoked, the toad, and came out, and he's like a JP Morgan kind of banker, Y Combinator backed like founder, no physics background whatsoever. And he came out with 2 edits to Einstein's theory of relativity after a 15-minute experiment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the and like Tim like went in to help me validate like that he had validated this, and he's like, no, I'm not sharing like bullshit. Like this is actually real. He wouldn't tell me the guy's name. Yeah. Because the guy's like, he's now a famous physicist, and like nobody could know that this was his process. So a year later, my wife and I are at a birthday party here in Austin, and we get introduced to this guy, Dr. Bruce Damer, and Bruce is a pretty famous NASA astrobiologist, former NASA guy. And he has the most cited theory on the origin of life, which is essentially very similar to, I think the terms like transpermia or panspermia, where like the asteroid like comes into planet Earth, has like organic matter on it, lands in a geyser, was essentially like impregnated. Yep. Whether it was on accident or on purpose or whatever, that's not his to debate. But he's the one who solved that like organic life and protocells came from this like wet dry process through this geyser. And he's telling me this story. He looks like Gandalf. He's like 65. He's the coolest guy ever. And he's like, I just came out of the psychedelic closet. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, well, my theory, I discovered it while on ayahuasca. It's like in this DMT experience. And he's like, I've been using like psychedelics throughout my NASA career, to like develop asteroid mining technologies and all of these like incredible, like serious like intellectual property. And I was like, dude, Tim Ferriss told me this story a year ago about this guy, and he's like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. He like said the guy's name. He's like, I know him, that's legit. And I was like, oh my God, wow, this is real. And so for the next 6 months, I just couldn't shake it. And I'm like, after coming out of my psychedelic experiences like years before, I was like, okay, cool. Like let's solve world peace. Like that's this meta thing. Well, let's like take first principles approach. What's the best way? Okay, solving world peace involves like helping people find peace within themselves. Okay, that's a great start. How do we help people find peace? Okay, psychedelics. That seems like a pretty good way. Like it worked for me, worked for you, others. Like let's go and lean into that, create access. So really what I've been trying to do since 2015, 17, is like try to create access to psychedelic medicine, and I'm like a marketer, like I have a venture fund and an incubator. Like I raise money, I put deals together, I build teams, and I feel like I was looking at this market going, we have a marketing problem. Like this genius thing that like Rick Dowlin and MAPS and like others have done is like leaned into the veteran focus. Sure. 22 veteran suicides a day. How do we solve that problem? Well, let's fund veteran suicide PTSD research and treatment. And that gets the legislators. It's a bipartisan issue at this point. So I'm like, that's great. It's gotten us very far. It's obviously not gotten us far enough because the FDA rejected Lykos's approval a year ago. But I think it's gotten so it's when I sit back and I think about it, I'm like, okay, well, if psychedelics keep falling in this Western medicalized model, we're going to run the risk of like just putting them into this bucket, and forever 50% of the population is going to be like, I don't test in the DSM. I'm not depressed or anxious, so psychedelics aren't for me.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, psychedelics are for everybody. Again, like I probably get some pushback for that statement, but that's kind of what I believe. So I'm like, psychedelics are for everybody. How do we get people more comfortable with psychedelics? How do we get the other 50% of the population more comfortable with psychedelics? And so for the next 6 months after I met Bruce and after the Tim conversation, I'm like, dude, that's it. Like, let's go align with capitalism. Let's go definitively prove that like you can access some bizarre, insane, omnipotent quantum field God plugging into the source, and you're getting these downloads because like Bruce's story was like one of those where I was like, oh wow, like he's been featured on like 2 of the top, Nature peer-reviewed journals, like for his studies, like it gets a citation every single day. Like that's validation. And then lo and behold, I meet this guy, or I eventually met this guy, this random coincidence, like a month and a half ago, who had the warp drive. Well, so one of his technologies that he's like commercializing right now is a theoretical application for warp drive, like how not time travel, but near like light speed travel works. And the crazy thing is, by the way, this is nuts. The only geometric shape that would actually theoretically allow for warp speed travel is a saucer. That's the only thing I can come up with. That's the only thing that works. And the saucer actually doesn't fly like this. I found this out a month ago when he was in town. It flies like this. So if you've ever seen, it flies straight up. So if you've ever seen the gimbal video of the U.S. Navy off the coast of San Diego, and they're following that, they call it the gimbal, and they're following that disc, and it's rotating like this.
Up, yep.
He's like, this physicist is like, that is what's happening. Yeah. And he's like, we're proving it in our math right now. I get chills talking about that. So when I met this other gentleman, I'm not going to share his name just because he's still becoming. Now he's like got the 10th most cited like physics paper in the world, and he's a part of this group that is like invite only from the DoD and the military. They like invite like the top physicists in America into this group, and they meet up like 6 times a year just to discuss and collaborate. And like he finally got comfortable enough with some of the physicists in the group. I think there's like 80 people in the group, and he's like, this was actually catalyzed by a DMT experience. And they're looking at him and they're like, oh, another one. Wow. Yeah. And they're like, we got 3 of those in here. Like, who have had major breakthroughs in physics that were catalyzed by a DMT or an LSD experience, And so back to kind of my vision and thoughts and strategy around minds and creating access, I was like, if we can, this is the craziest story. I don't know of a crazier, until we find proof of like extraterrestrial life. Like I don't know if I know of a crazier story. Oh, actually, Danny Goller, who've discovered that you can shine the laser beam on the wall and smoke DMT. Have you seen this?
I've seen some of the stuff on Instagram, but I haven't dove into it.
Yeah. Danny he's a wild man. We've been considering funding some of his research. But you can shine a laser on a wall and you can smoke DMT, and like 70% of the people that look close enough at the laser, not even close enough, 70% of the people that look at the laser actually see the lines of code, running in the laser. Yeah. And I've got friends that have done it, and they put groups together, and like the guy who put this together, like he didn't see it, but like his wife and all his friends saw it. It's like, I've never done it myself, but I think like the warp drive, Einstein's theory of relativity edits / like origin of life breakthroughs on psychedelics, that and the laser beam thing are the craziest things I've ever heard, and until we find proof of extraterrestrial life, I just don't think there's going to be something that's going to supersede that. And so I was like, let's go and fund academic research and prove that you can actually have like real breakthroughs in science and technology and mathematics, and prove that like we can actually like tap into these fields of information and pull things out that we previously went in and not ever knew. And I think that if we can do that, we're going to appeal to a whole new market of investors and philanthropists 100%. And entrepreneurs that are going to be like, oh wow, psychedelics might actually be for me. Like I want some of that, you know?
Getting access to that information. Because I remember my first time ever doing ayahuasca, my first experience was like cosmic blowout, right? Like massive, consciousness, deep out space. And I had this visual representation. And at the time I was like kind of getting back into physics and math and, listening about Einstein. And I remember having this visual representation where I was in like Isaac Newton's study. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And it was like, it felt really big and really expansive and really growthful. And like, this is like the pinnacle of science. Wow. And then all of a sudden in that experience, it zoomed way big. And it's like, what you guys are experiencing on Earth with math and science is a fraction of what's happening. And it just like expanded my awareness of like what's possible on a scientific level.
Wow.
And then it took literally, it was like, there was like these like machine elf kind of creatures in the experience. And they took like theory of relativity and they put it on the fridge. And they're like, look how cute this is.
Dude.
And like as an analogy of like when you have like your, toddler comes home from kindergarten and they've got like a, painting with the sun in the corner and it's like, oh, it's cute. It's cute art. And they're like, what you guys have done on Earth as humans is like, that's how we see it.
Oh
like,
my
it's
God.
Like, it's cute. Like you guys have no idea of what's possible. Dude. And for me, I was just like so intimidated by that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
of course.
I'm not the guy to figure out any like math or scientific experience. Like, there's just no way of ever comprehending what's actually happening.
Totally.
But yeah, I can relate to like especially with DMT, with ayahuasca or DMT, like there's like, it's like scientific, it's like geometric math. And like, every time I have those experiences, it's very, it's just overwhelming for me in that experience. So I can see how someone who that's their field, having that experience can definitely enhance or open up some concepts for them.
Do you know what's interesting? I agree with, I'm 100% on board with all that. The craziest thing about the second person with the Einstein theory of relativity, he had literally taken like one physics class in like sophomore year of high school.
Wow.
So like he didn't, and the way he describes it, I just talked to him like a few days ago, and the way he describes it, he's like, what people don't understand is he was like, when they read my papers, I sit there and because he hasn't shared this with a lot of people, right? He only shares it with close friends. He's like, what people don't understand is like, I'm cheating. He's like, I saw the end answer and result, and then I just reverse engineered everything that I saw. And and it was a 15-minute experience. Wow. And that 15-minute experience involved like past life regressions and him like being this like failed like scientist back in like the early 1920s. It was like, I mean, it's full on crazy, and like there's different.
It's
insane. So the fact that like he just had all of this downloaded, and then now he's got this very successful company that's like commercializing a lot of this intellectual property that's raised from like serious like partners from like Sequoia and like major venture funds have like not the funds but the partners themselves have backed him. It's just, that's like wild to me. And then I found also through our research is that like we ran this survey where we were like, okay, we've put out this global survey and asking people for if they've had these types of breakthroughs and what their protocols are. And what we found is like, and Dr. Bruce Damer, he came up with this kind of saying, our co-founder, and he's like, you can't do the revealing without doing the healing. So like in like 9 out of 10 of the stories that we read, nobody ever had like this technological breakthrough in science or whatever their field was without actually going back in and healing like early childhood trauma.
Sure. So it's the blockage, right? It's blocking you from getting access.
100%. Like Bruce says, like he used to have this knot in his stomach. He was adopted at birth, and he's all his life he'd be like, I've had this knot in my stomach. And in this ayahuasca experience, and it wasn't, by the way, this experience was not a full ayahuasca experience. He was in the jungle, and it was like about his 30th night, not consecutively, but his 30th time to ever drink ayahuasca.
It's a lot of ayahuasca.
It was, but what he had done is he'd started with a full dose, and he kept titrating down to 1/30th of a dose. So the night that he actually had his breakthrough, it was like a microdose. Because he had taught himself to like use that to kind of stimulate his own DMT production, and then he could kind of like guide himself through the experience. And that experience, ayahuasca like came to him and was like, hey, do you want to know where you came from? And he's like, of course, like I've always wondered, where I've come from. He goes back in, he relives his birth, hears his mother's voice for the first time. Nurse picks him up, puts him in a carriage, and whisks him off in another room, and he was there by himself for 5 days alone, like just with nurses coming in and feeding him. Never saw his mother again. Never in the rest of his life saw his mother again. So all of a sudden he had this closure on that part of his life. He had heard her voice, had the closure, and actually remembers times from when he was in the womb and heard his mom, and I'm having fucking chills, had his mom and dad sit there debating whether or not they should put him up for adoption just because of their financial situation they were in. So all of a sudden he has this deep understanding and like love and compassion for what they did, that they wanted to give him a better life. God, fuck, that makes me like, that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
yeah. And, so he had this like closure, you know, and then all of a sudden ayahuasca's like, okay, now that you know where you came from, do you want to know where we all come from? And he's like, that's my, we've been working on this for 20 years. This is like life's work. And next thing you know, he ends up on the side of an asteroid and he's flying in through planet Earth, like primordial Earth, like past volcanoes and ash and darkness, and lands in this geyser and goes through this wet dry process. And obviously like, he had previous, like, you know, he's a subject matter expert, so it was a lot easier for that. So the stories between him and the warp drive guy are like too different because he had this previous experience, but still it like all came down and pieced it together. And then I think like 2 weeks later he has a daily breathwork practice, and it all came back to him, and he called his partner and they met in the lab that night and they put the final puzzle pieces together to solve the kind of origin of life theory. And yeah, so I think that the point I'm getting is like, and I get a lot of pushback. They're like, oh, you want capitalism to come in and fuck everything up in psychedelics and try to get the bros in to take drugs. And I'm like, no, like we have found in our research, like you cannot just sit down and like take psychedelics and then like figure out how to sell more Google ad space. You know, it's like, or have some novel intellectual download. And also what we've seen too is like, you may go in and this is like a carrot on the stick. You may go in and want to like learn how to be a better like marketer for some, you know, your whatever ad agency, but like you're gonna come out and like 9 times out of 10 you're gonna be like, I should fucking not be doing this.
I should be doing this anymore.
Yeah, I should be doing something. I should run a retreat or be a yoga teacher or whatever it is, you know. So like, I'm glad I got that out.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's what's really fascinating about it too is there's so much coming out, and there's definitely incredible benefits, and people are changing their lives too. And there's also, I think, a lot of like, where's the line? Because there's also a lot of bullshit that comes out where people oh, I did ayahuasca and now yada yada, and these are the codes, and the pyramids have these things. You know, maybe that's true, right? But it's like, it's really easy to get pulled into like this conspirituality.
Totally, like, dude. Conspirituality, that's a great term. Wow.
Conspirituality, where you just get pulled into this thing, you know. And so there's like, but like, where's the meter? Because of, you know, it's not black and white, you know. And so there's like these areas, and you just see people get really pulled in here. And so for me, at least, I have like a hard time deciphering of like, where's the line? Because then there's like, you know, super woo. There's like a whole nother, you know, species living in the core of the earth, you know. And like, you know, there's like. And so just from my experiences, because there are so many people who like really take it way too far, it also gives everything kind of a bad name, where people are talking about everything. But there is, you know, these experiences where people are actually having life-changing breakthroughs and like gaining this information to help, you know, progress the quality of the human race. And so that's something I'm stuck on, of like, you know, my bullshit meter's changed over the years. But it's like, but I also know that there's probably some truth to it. So I don't know how you navigate like, you know, people's in space, especially on like social media. People are like spewing, you know, just nonsense. Yeah. And so it's tough to kind of,
I don't know. Somebody told me the other day, they were like, we as a society, like just don't have an agreement on like base reality right now, you know? And I think I have to say, like, I feel like with what's going on, and people like bark at X and Elon for like having this whole freedom of speech thing, like, and confusing the world. I think we have to have this like shakeup right now, you know? And I don't know where it settles, and I don't know if it's an AI that helps us ground it into reality or what. I'm sure it probably has some version of that. It's scary to think that code could be written that would then tell us what base reality is, you know, or is that real or is that not? I just think, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm very optimistic and excited about the next, you know, 10, 20 years, but I think that, I don't know. I think it's good for us to all just start to question. You know, I have a very close friend, a mentor. This guy, Steve Jurvetson, runs Future Ventures. He was a Tesla, SpaceX. He's still on the SpaceX board. He was on the Tesla board for a long time. One of the smartest people I know. This is like true engineer of venture capitalists. And we've got this like signal channel where like I've been like introducing him to the idea of like UAPs and UFOs. And I've got this group of like 5 or 6 people, most of which are like full-on believers. And like he's the one who's like not. And it's just funny to watch like how I've seen him open up a little bit. I'm not gonna say he's a believer at all, but like, you know, whether we're talking about like seed oils or UAPs and stuff like that, or we don't talk about like Egypt or anything like that, but like you could just see like I think people we need to be having these crazy discussions, and whether what's going on underneath the pyramids is like actual like real ancient technology, or if it's just some like aqueduct. I have no idea what it is, by the way. Like I think that we need to be having open dialogues about all of these things, and I think that even the people that write these things off, like Steve, like I love you, dude, if you're listening to this, the people that write these off, you can still start to see their minds open just a little bit, you know, by just even like running through the thought experiment of like, what if that was real, you know? Because there's so many people that just can't even, they got a ceiling and they're like, that's not real, so I'm not even going to play around with it. Well, it's like, what if you just pretend like it was? Like, what would have to be true for that to be true? So I think everything's like positive. I think the world's wild. I'm glad, thank God for Elon and free speech. I know that he's a pretty controversial figure right now, but I think we need to be having these conversations. And we never had the option or right through mainstream media to question or even platform any of these ideas. So it's like, dude, fucking let them fly, you know? Like, we'll self-correct at some point. And I think, you know, unfortunately, like, people might get hurt and probably have been hurt along the way through misinformation. And I just don't think that we can let, like, the small percentage of the population that does get affected by misinformation or what people perceive to be dangerous free speech, like, the bad does not, like, it does not outweigh the good, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting time too, because you know, there's a lot of this stuff that comes out and I review it and I'm like, you know, that'd be wild. Like, yeah, if an alien showed up today, I'm like, yeah, I guess that's an alien.
Yeah.
We have aliens are now here, you know? And
totally.
I think we just get so desensitized now, you know, and that's also happening, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
In some capacity, where it's like, I feel like we're as a species more open to the absurdity.
Yeah.
And because, you know, the whole human experience is absurd, right? Like you talk about, you have that moment of like, holy shit, we're alive, right? Like we're on a planet Earth, we're on a rock, hurling through space, what's going on, you know?
That's right, your book, that's right.
Yeah.
At least you're alive, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember, you know, to kind of wrap that piece up, I remember having a similar moment after kind of my psychedelic experience. I was in my condo in Utah and I have like this patio that overlooks, you know, there's kind of like a popular, there's restaurants and stuff below. And I was overlooking my patio and there was a bunch of people having dinner like on a Friday night and there was a full moon. And I remember thinking like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like what is happening right now? Like I'm on this rock, we're hurling through space, no one knows what's going on, and you're just eating dinner casually. Like there's no, like, what the actual hell is happening? This is so insane.
Yeah.
You know, and then you tell people and they're like, yeah, you know, like, no, but you don't get it.
You don't get it.
You don't get it. Like what's
going
going on? And I think that's actually a really important part of.
Were you sober at the time when you had that experience?
Totally sober.
Yeah, totally.
Totally sober. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? This is insane.
Yeah.
And then I think what happened for me was just kind of this reality of like, well, I can't figure it out. And no one knows.
Yeah.
Right? Actually, like the reality is no one knows and no
totally.
one's getting out here alive.
Yeah, totally.
So how do I just like live a healthy, happy life?
Yeah, totally.
You know? And so there was a lot of, for me at least, there was a lot of relief in stopping the exploration of trying to figure it out, but at the same time, continuing on helping people live healthier, happier lives.
Yeah.
Without trying to get the secret keys to unlock the insights.
Totally, dude. And
so I think there's, you know, it sounds like you're saying there's people who are solving really, really, really hard problems. And I think for me, I'm not the one to do that, which is great. I have other opportunity to help people on more of a baseline level, but I think it's needed.
Yeah.
And so it's just like a really fascinating time right now because it feels like as a species, we're like leveling up to like, you know, and it's what Terrence McKenna said. It's like, say, you know, he talks about, I don't know if you've seen this, but he has this mushroom experiences before he dies. And he's just like, it is just crazy out here. Like, what is going on? Like, it's absolutely insane. And he says, well, this is what happens for a species as they like prepare to go to the stars.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And that was in the early 90s when he had that experience.
He did say that's right.
And now it's like with AI and with technology and, you know, going to space and UFOs and everything. I'm like, something's happening. Wow. Something's happening.
It's fascinating. I mean, Pete, we need more. I'm so grateful for you and like being called to do the work that you're doing because we need people like you to help ground people through these times, you know, and coach them and hone them and soften them, you know. So you're doing great work, dude.
Well, so are you, man. I mean, you nailed it. It's like, okay, how do we bring more world peace? And, you know, one thing you said that I loved is like, well, before you can have world peace, you have to have peace within yourself, right? Yeah. And it reminds me of the Rumi quote. And he says, I wanted to be smart So I'll change the world. But then I became wise and realized I have to change myself.
Yeah, dude, that's great. Wow.
And so that foundation of like, before we can really grow and expand and actually be of service, we have to be in service with ourselves.
Wow. Totally.
Right? And so, that process of a lot of these guys having these breakthroughs of like, working through their own stuff first, so that you can be a conduit to, the universe, man. It's exciting stuff. And, you yourself, going through that experience to release those old limiting beliefs was a necessary. You wouldn't be where you're at without that experience,
Yeah.
And so it's inspiring stuff, man.
Thank you, man.
Well, Ford, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thank you for
You're an
having
absolute
me.
unit. I'm excited for your future, and it seems like the best of your work is yet to come.
Oh, dude, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Big love, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You too, dude.